Thousands and thousands of lore hunters are trying to find what's happening behind the scenes of Minecraft. There are lots and lots of mysteries yet to be solved. Today, I, MC Theorist, am gonna solve all those mysteries. I've put together a theory, one that'll change your mind. So, I'll break this story into two parts so that you can understand it better, and it's very long and fascinating. So, let's start. One key element for a game like Minecraft is the structures. There is so much of them, but I've picked three of them that look quite similar: the ocean monument, the stronghold, and the ancient city. All of them have one thing in common: they're big and they are underground or underwater. You see, no mobs in game can build such structures except the ancient builders. Ancient builders are our descendants. So I think the key point we should notice is that ancient builders are mainly building underground and their builds are enormous. I think the ancient builders used to live underground. They came to the surface seldomly. I would like to point out that these buildings were made by the ancient builders since they're massive. I'll call the ancient builders as ancients, and they're the strongest, wisest species in the entire Minecraft world. So, what about the mansions? The mansions are massive, but they aren't underground. They are of pillagers, clearly, as we get to see the statues scattered everywhere in the mansion. But it wasn't actually built by them. In fact, it was built by the ancient builders. For further proofs, I'd like to show you a photo. The first image is of an ancient city, and the second image is of a woodland mansion, as I said. There's a fake portal room, and there's also an obsidian cage, and that's one. It's very hard to find a stronghold, and how do they manage to create a fake ender portal? As I said before, the stronghold was built by the ancient builders. They let it in, and also the colors of the wool I showed you before are the exact same colors of Steve's skin. I think this is a tribal dress that the ancients used to wear. And diamond blocks are very rare to make and find, so I think it's impossible for the pillagers to just get the diamond blocks and make this entire mansion. So, according to me, I think the ancients were actually captured. They were captured and enslaved, and the pillagers made them to make this mansion. Of course, they would have fought them, but for some reason they didn't want to show their technology, the technology of the skulks that we see today in the ancient cities, and also the skulk caves we see. Soon broke a war because the pillagers were in need of these skulk sensors and its technology, because it would make their base for a next level, the mansion to a next level. So they wanted the skull. And hearing this, the ancient builders immediately started to revolt, and they broke a war and they started fighting with the help of the villagers. They freed the villagers from the pillagers for their experiments. And for the question how the pillager was created, was in fact villagers started to get curious. In fact, they started to experiment on themselves and soon broke another virus, forming pillagers. And they also caused a virus to break again. This time it's the zombie virus, which infected both the villagers and the ancients. So the ancients tried to find a cure for this virus, so they built igloos that is far off from the pillager outposts and the mansions, and they created secret bases, much like how the mansions were created. I mean, the mansion secret rooms. So, to fight back the pillagers, they started making mobs such as creepers, skeletons, and zombies. All these mobs, in fact, got angry with the ancient builders, so against the ancient builders, and they helped the pillager. So the ancients had only one last choice. What they did was very interesting. They created a boss that is capable of destroying an entire species, in fact, making them extinct. The weather. So, the theory is the overworld is the past, the nether is also the past, while the end is the present. So, let me show you some proof. So you can see here how the mobs evolved from the pig to the piglins and the zombified piglins and the piglin brood and the zoglin, hoglin and striders. While for the slime, it was the magma cube. And for the skeleton, it was the weather skeleton. For more proof, if you enter a bastion, you will get this title. Those were the days. And yeah, the creeper became the blaze, which we see in the, well, nether fortresses. Steve is from the end because the player and the enderman had one similarity. They were of the same type. The endermans came from the ancients, and the player also came from the ancients. I'll explain it soon. So we stopped the storyline at the time when the weather came to destroy the ancients. It wanted to make the ancients extinct. So, how did the ancients survive? They survived using a crystal, not just any crystal, the end crystal. Let me explain to you. You see, the rooftop of the nether rooftop, you see, the bedrock rooftop is the overworld. But why is it so flat? The overworld is kinda hilly, right? Well, it's all because of the end crystal. Yes, it's not the end crystal, it's somewhat an ancestor or overpowered end crystal that made the nether too hot and made the rooftop of the nether flat. Actually, we're in the caves. By that I mean, when we spawn into the nether, we're in the caves. All the biomes we see in the nether is a cave. And let me explain how this works. You see, there's a TNT near me. When I explode it, it forms a hole. Then we can see what happens next. Now, when I place the end crystal, you get to know that it becomes flat. It doesn't make a hole. Let me show it to you again. You see it again. It doesn't form a hole. So the thing is, the end crystals doesn't make holes, and it was used in the process to kill the weather boss. So what happened is the ancient builders wanted to destroy the weather because it was about to kill them, and they made these crystals and they forced themselves to go underneath the ground, which means they lived in caves and they started building fortified fortified towers, which we see today as nether fortresses. And for the villagers, they literally transferred their genes to pig. That's the reason why they actually barter, because we can see that they have some sort of similarity. Both piglins and villagers trade. So they started building fortified palaces to live underneath the overworld because it's too toxic. The radiation is too toxic, and they also built the bastions for the piglins. So it seems that the villagers actually somehow became the piglins. I don't support that theory, but it makes a bit of sense because both of them trade, and somehow it's went to the piglins too. And now I guess the the fortified palaces and the bastions that was created underneath was what we see now, the massive structures in the nether, while other structures such as strongholds, mine shafts, and the ocean monument would have exactly been burnt out by the lava. that surrounded it, and also the stone became to netherrack, and all the mushrooms started to just violate and grow into trees. And I guess that's what happened to the nether. Now, for the question, what exactly are the fossils in the Soul Valley? The fossils in the Soul Valley are the remnants of the weather and the other mobs that died. Not the mobs such as creepers and others, it's big mobs that the ancients tried to make. And it makes so much sense because, of course, you see, the ancients lived underground, they would have run their tests underground also. But then there was this time the nether cooled down. While every mob literally evolved, the chicken eggs de-evolved. Yes, it de-evolved. Now, many of you would know that chickens used to be T-Rexes or dinosaurs. But in Minecraft, I think it became into dragons. While the mobs such as humans, ancients, by the humans I mean ancients, they became into enderments. The nether, in fact, is becoming cold. It's becoming colder and colder and colder. Soon, it's gonna become like the overworld, then it's gonna become the end. Like the end dimension, not the end. So, what happens, as I said, the chicken eggs were worshipped. They were worshipped as gods for the Endermans because it gave the power for teleportation. And at this slight moment, Steve escaped from the nether. Yes, Steve escaped from the nether. How? Because the X gave out some spark to the portals. I forgot to say that the portals were actually made before, since they always traveled around the world's overworld and the nether. Even the ancients didn't know that it was actually their timeline. Even Steve didn't know that it was actually their timeline. So, what happened? Steve became so strong. And the proof for this is that we can see that he can carry so much of weight. He's literally not infected with zombies and any other mobs. He can respawn. So back to the end, the Endermans started worshipping the eggs and the Ender egg, and they started building pillars. And the shards of the crystal, the ancient crystal, was stuck on top of these pillars, and it was also covered with cages so that nobody can break it. Why? Because it powered the islands. Now the nether became nothing but a vast void and islands everywhere, which is not filled with water, it was filled with void. But we, the player, go to hunt for the egg. We hunt the egg anyway because we don't know what happened. We just went and hunted the egg. This puts the Endermans and the ancients in danger, and then everything is lost. And the end cities were actually built by the ancients. It was a period of time when the ancients and the Endermans had some sort of conjunction. They looked similar. And for the most asked questions, such as what is the warden was a creation made up of souls, the souls of the ancients. Well, the ancients sacrificed their willing volunteers to make the warden. Well, the Endermans and the ancients are the same, so when they were in such a point that both of them, it looked like an Enderman ancient or an ancient Enderman or Skulk Enderman, I suppose that would make sense. It literally made the entities. So that's it. That's my theory. Guys, I put tons of effort on this. Please subscribe so that it can reach many people. And I hope people don't get confused anymore. So with that, I end this theory. But that is in fact a part 2. Wait, this makes Steve the villain. Does that mean the player is the villain? The Ender Dragon is the hero? Well, that's for another theory. So, bye bye. Have a great time.